Okay, no, I would say a perfect example of resilience is my brother Alfred, who in about 1984, uh, his logging partner dropped a log on him and broke both legs, ruptured his spleen. He died twice on the way to the hospital, and then when he got to the hospital, he's working his way through it. The doctor told him he'll never walk again, and he said, "No, I will walk again." And so he had to go through a lot of physical therapy and so forth, and it was very hard on him. But he had such a resilient attitude of, "I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it," that after he finally got out of the hospital, he was still walking, but he learned to walk with walking sticks and a cane. But his attitude and his resilience on that was so good that they would, every week he was going back to the physical therapy group and talking to and bringing along patients that especially had really just given up, and he encouraged them to keep going, that things will get better, and he did. He never said poor me. He said, "It's what happened to me. I've got to go on living." I think situations create resilience. You have to really look at it and face up to it and just do it.
What resilience is to me is bouncing back from some bad event or negative happening. And for example, as a kid, I moved to 8 different schools and before I graduated from high school. And each time I moved, I had to leave good friends behind and make new friends. And I learned how to make friends easily. That's how I bounced back. And then as an adult, after I was married, our first child was a beautiful daughter. And then I had 3 stillborn babies. And bouncing back, my husband and I decided we would adopt a baby, and we decided to adopt a boy. So we had our first baby boy, and then some years later we adopted a second baby boy. So that's how I bounced back in my life. There have been studies showing that each of us have a self. We can identify a self. Sometimes people experience it in their heart, sometimes people experience it in their heads. I experience mine in my heart. It's like, this is where I feel identified. And then above my head, here, I experience a higher self. Some people say a spirit in some places, but in psychosynthesis it's called a higher self. And when I am resilient, then I do what called align these two. It's like I'm here with myself, and then I tune in, or I think about my higher self and see if they are connected. It's just a connecting. I can still stay in myself. That's where I will do that. But I feel the connection with my higher self. Resilience requires a broader picture. It requires the broadest possible view of what's happening. Say if I have an accident, in fact I did last September, I had to stay in my car because I couldn't open my car door. The door was blocked or bent. And so I was able to breathe deeply and know that I was there and I was okay. I did not have any injuries. I wasn't injured. The car was. And the other car was also slightly damaged, but there were no people hurt. So then I had to stop and figure out what are my options. And that's resilience, is looking at not only what bad has happened, but what are the options to solve this? And how this, and doing that, thinking about the options, is helped by being aligned, because my self and my higher self give me more options. I don't have to react. I can simply know that there is something to be done that can solve the problem.
I grew up in a farm family in western North Dakota, and work was highly valued. You could say about somebody, well, he drinks a lot, but he's a hard worker. I mean, it almost absolved everything, right? If you just were a hard worker. And so my life is full of those kind of people. My dad, my grandfathers, my mother, who lost 3 of her children. I said to her one time, I said, how do you survive that? I mean, that's, I'm a father of 4. I can't imagine that happening. And she said, well, you just focus on what you've got. Don't focus on what you lost. And she said, so my focus has been the children that are alive. And that's how I've survived. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. Staying focused properly, and then keep making your choices. And if I were in talking to other people who would ask, I would say that what's important is to realize that even if you've made mistakes, they say, well, you got to go to college or you can't get a job. Well, that's not true. If you haven't gone to college, then figure out another way to do it. If you look around, there's lots of examples of people who are resilient and can provide an example to you as to how to live your life and the kind of values that you ought to have, how you treat people, what you expect out of people, what you can do for them. So I've had lots of those, and they've provided great inspiration for me. Jimmy Buffett, the musician, says that life is 80% attitude and timing, and I think that's true. You can't control what happens to you. What you can control is how you react to it. Now what do I do? And I think a great example of that is there's a famous jazz musician and composer, Duke Ellington. While he was, developing his bands and coming up through that, the racism in the country was terrible. And he said, well, I took the energy that it takes for pity and wrote some blues instead. And I think that's a perfect example of attitude. He couldn't control exactly what was happening to him, but he could control his reaction to it and what he responded with. And what he responded with was utterly fantastic music that will survive for centuries. I've always loved football coaches because they have all these great sayings. And I think it was Chuck Knox, when he was with the Seattle Seahawks, said, it's not a matter of getting knocked down. Everybody gets knocked down. The difference is in the people that get up. And so for me, it's always been a matter of getting up. No matter what happens, you get up the next day, you put on your pants, and you go to work.